So as I told you that today we are going to start with a very beautiful poem, that is The Snake Trying. Before we start with this poem, I would like to recapitulate the previous chapter, which was the bond of love. So through this chapter, through that particular chapter, we all have got the message that animals are equally sensitive. They also do have memory. Fine. So generally what we think that animals are no more sensitive and whatever wrong behavior we can do with them, that is okay. But basically the previous chapter as well as the poem which we are going to do today will convey the message that generally not all the animals are harmful, and we should not harm them without any reason unless and until you need to keep yourself safe. Okay, when it is time to defense, at that particular time you can take an action, but when an animal is not harming you, is better to be quiet. Fine. So the poem is basically written by a very famous poet, that is W. Roche. Okay, it's this poet was basically a very well known, he was a Canadian. Okay, this poet was from Canada. Fine. And he was a geophysicist. Geophysicist means a person who is studying about the geological things. Fine. So he was a geophysicist. So with this particular designation only we can get to know that how his interest towards the animals might have arose. Okay. Because generally this question arises that how a person got the interest to write about the animals. So this is very clear for us. Now, before starting the poem, let's talk about the poet. Fine. William Renton's Eustace Roche. This was his proper name, which we call it as W. Roche. Born on 14th June 1894. He was a Canadian geophysicist and a poet, as I told you. And the genre, we have discussed when we were studying the first poem, that every poet has a type of writing the poetry. Okay, and the type of poetry which he writes is known as the genre of his poetry. So this person was in a habit of writing the imagist poetry, means imagination. He used to imagine the things happening and then he used to write, known as the first modern Canadian poet. So he was very well known. He was designated as the first modern Canadian poet. Okay, modern poetry basically are free of verse. It means there is no rhyming scheme. We have already discussed that is there are rhyming schemes in the poem, but generally in the modern poetry, rhyming schemes are not there. They are free verse. And this poet died on 26th August 1966. Now, as we have started with the introduction only, so this poem, the main learning goal of this poem is that it is trying to convey the message that not all rodents like snake are harmful. Okay, basically, moreover, we are very scared of rodents. So here the message is that not all rodents are dangerous for us. Second is prevention of animal through cruelty. Okay, here we are not talking about all the big animals or special animals. Let's take the example of a small dog. Okay, generally children keep on throwing stones and kicking the dogs and troubling them. So this is about the message is that we should stop doing that. We should stop showing cruelty towards the animal. And the last message is we should not harm the animals without any reason. Yes, of course, if you are feeling a danger from that animal, if the animal has attacked you somehow, then you can take the action in your defense. But if the animal is not harming you, it's better not to harm them. Okay. So moving to the first paragraph. The snake trying to escape the pursuing stick with sudden carving of thin, long body, how beautiful. So here, basically we are talking about a snake who is struggling to save itself. So the snake is attacked by a human being and the snake is struggling hard to keep itself safe. So that's why the poem name is The Snake Trying. So the snake trying to escape the pursuing stick. Now here, Pursuing stick is basically a transferred epithet device. Please underline and write it down. Why? Because pursuing is an adjective. Fine. And generally we use the adjective in front of a person or a thing. Fine. So here adjective has been used with that stick. So here we are trying to say, the poet is trying to say the man is approaching with the stick. The man is holding a stick to hit the snake, and the person is pursuing, getting closer to the snake. And snake is trying to escape from that pursuing stick, of course, along with the man. Okay, with sudden curving of thin long body. Curving means you might have seen the snake moving. They don't move straight. Okay, they move in a zigzag way. So the curving is talking about that particular zigzag movement of the snake. So here the author is trying to say that the snake has a thin long body and he is curving while he is trying to escape. Okay. So this first paragraph, we have the poetic device, that is transferred epithet, that has been used in the second line of the first para, that is the pursuing stick. Okay, moving to the next paragraph. So we will continue from here. How beautiful and graceful are his shapes. He glides through the water away from the stroke. Oh, let him go over the water. So the poet is saying that the beautiful curving movement of the snake is so beautiful and graceful, because when it's moving, that zigzag shape of the snake is very attractive. And you might have seen in the movies also that when the snake moves in the zigzag form, that's really very good to see. Okay, maybe not in the real life, because you might get scared, but actually that movement is very beautiful and graceful. He glides through the water away from the stroke. So now he is trying to slip out, trying to move smoothly over the water. Fine. To be away from the stroke of the stick. Okay. If the person is going to hit the snake hard with the stick, of course, that is a stroke. So he's trying to protect his body from that hard hit of the stick. And he's trying to go through the water. So the poet is requesting that, oh, let him go over the water. Fine. So let the snake go, because snake is not here harming the person. Continuously, the snake is trying to escape, but still the person is approaching to hit the snake. Now, as you can see, snake is an animal. Okay. And here the movement and the beauty and the graceful, these things have been used to explain the beauty of the snake, just like a human being. Fine. So here snake has been considered as a human being. So we will call it as the personification device. Okay, whenever any animal or a non-living thing is compared to the human being, or it is considered, basically not compared, it is considered as a human being, then we call it as the personification device. Like, oh, let him go. So if this line is being spoken barely by the poet, you will feel that he is talking about some person. Please underline and mark it. Moving to the third paragraph. Again, we'll start with the previous one. Over the water, into the reeds to hide, without hurt. Small and green, he is harmless, even to children, alone the sand. Okay, so now here the poet is saying, into the reeds to hide. Now, reed here means the long grasses. Okay, definitely you might have seen whenever we harm these kind of animals, they try to go into bushes. Okay, or the places that is very clumsy, so that they can go and hide there. Fine. So same is here, the snake is trying to move into the long grasses, okay, so that he cannot be hurt by the man. Okay, and next is small and green. So here we are going to talk about the small and green. He is harmless. He is basically the small and green you can use for the snake color also, and for the grass color also. So the poet is trying to say that the snake is harmless. It is so harmless that it is not even going to harm small children. Okay. So this is the urge of the poet that please don't hit and hurt the snake because this snake is not at all harmful to anyone, not even small children. Okay, now let's see. In this particular paragraph, two poetic devices has been used. Okay, the first was beauty of a snake. Okay, here we are talking about the beauty of the snake that is green, small. So the poet is imagining here. Okay, it's not that he's actually looking at a green snake and talking about, but he is imagining. So here we are talking as the imagery device because by the use of these color, the poet is trying to create an imagination and image in our brain because you can visualize that yes, the snake is of green color and how it is moving into the long grasses. Fine. And second is again the snake is considered as a human being. Fine. So we will call it as that personification device has been used. Okay. So in this third paragraph, two devices have been used. Now moving to the next paragraph, that is the last one. He lay until observed and chased away, and now he vanished in the ripples among the green slim reeds. So basically, through the first line, the poet is trying to say that snakes are still. They lay without any movement until they are observed. Okay, so they are not going to harm you in any situation unless and until you will observe them and you will start chasing them. Chasing means when you're running behind them to maybe harm the snake. Because when the snake observes that it is being chased by a human being, he feels that he might get hurt. And then he starts his movement. Otherwise, you might have seen snake generally hardly move unless and until they don't want to run away or move any time. Okay, they twist their body and they are still at a particular place. Okay, and now because the person was chasing the snake with a stick in his hand, the snake has now vanishes in the ripples. So the now snake has went into the long grasses and it has vanished. Now it is not even visible to anyone. Okay, and then he has vanished itself to the, okay, here ripple, we are talking about the waves of water, because in the third paragraph we have seen that it is trying, the second one it's mentioned that is trying to go through the water. So that is mentioned in the fourth paragraph, that when the snake is moving into the water there are waves being produced, and in the waves it is hard to recognize the snake, that where the snake is. Fine. And through the water the snake has disappeared in the waves of the water, and finally it got into the long grasses of that particular land, and finally the snake was able to save his life. Okay, class, so here very simple, we have studied about how the snake has tried, how the snake was chased by a man holding a stick in his hand, and finally the snake tried to hide itself into the long grasses, that is the reeds. Then he went through the water and he got disappeared in the ripples, the waves of the water. And finally, at the end, the snake succeeded. Now, it's really very important to go through the moral of the poem. The moral is all creatures of nature should be treated well, because we have just discussed this in the beginning of the poem, that every creature, every animal, rodent, insect, every creature of the nature are sensitive. They do feel pain. So they all should be treated well. And the second moral you can learn is that we should always show kindness and sympathy towards animals. Okay. Generally, what happened when we spot a snake in our house, we try to kill the snake. Rather than killing the snake, you can call a squad. They can come and they can catch the snake, and they can send the snake to a particular place. Okay, not all snakes are harmful. And next is that not all the snakes are harmful at all. Okay, so class, this was the poem which we have done.